I'm going to show you a short video of my research into sound design in video games and the history of when sound began for gaming. So at the beginning of my research, I wanted to understand which game was the first game to have audio. With my research, I stumbled across two men, they're named Nolan Bushnell and Ted Daubney. In March 1971, Bushnell became the chief engineer at Nutting Associates. Bushnell and Daubney created a game which was the first coin-operated arcade game to use a video display to transmit a video signal. The game was called Computer Space, and the objective was to maneuver your spacecraft and to shoot the opposing spaceships. In 1972, Bushnell and Daubney co-founded Atari. In the same year, they hired a man called Alan Alcorn. Alcorn was hired because of his electrical engineering and computer science skills. In that same year, Pong, the game, was created by Alcorn. Pong was given to Alcorn as a training exercise by Bushnell. The idea of Pong came from the Magnavox Odyssey, which was created by Ralph Baer from Sanders Associates. Bushnell got the idea from Pong from the Magnavox Odyssey. Magnavox later sued Atari for the patent infringement. Alcorn was already over budget, and Nolan's request was, "I want the roar of a crowd of thousands. Cheers, applause." Alcorn went to work and poked around the software to figure out how to include sound. Within less than an hour, Alcorn realised that there was already different tones that existed on the sync generator. Alcorn gated the tones out, which took half a chip which created the sounds in Pong.
Pong! It's the first video game.
In those days, the programmers created the sounds.
I think they wanted to create an audience and cheers, and at the end of the day, they were just left with a tone.
Definitely limited to the waveforms they could make.
They didn't have samples. So they had a chip that made sounds.
They could only get up to a certain pitch because that took some horsepower away from the rest of the game.
People have probably heard that sound tens of thousands of times, and it's one little tone.
These are only some of the iconic sounds in video games. These sounds to me appear when someone who has played a game in their childhood then listens to them years later. These sounds we hear tens of thousands of times while gaming, so there's no wonder our brain remembers them at a later stage. The beeper speaker was used in computers such as the IBM PC, for example. The speaker was controlled by the PC's CPU. At this time, the speaker could use different sounds and tones, but this would be very heavy on the PC's CPU, which would not leave much power for anything else. The FM synthesizer was used in the early 1980s. Most PC and video games consoles had their own dedicated sound chips to take away the workload of the CPU. Different systems had a different sound, and this is because of how many channels they could use at one time. Having multiple channels allows the programmer to use multiple tones to create music as well as effects. These sounds are what we hear on systems such as Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES, and the Sega Mega Drive. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about basic sound theory. Frequency. Frequency allows us to hear how high or low a sound wave is. Frequency is the speed of the vibration in which it travels. This gives the pitch of the sound. Amplitude. This will show us how strong or weak the sound wave is. Amplitude is the displacement or the fluctuation of the wave's air molecules movements. The phase is a combination of sounds interfering with one another. If we add one sound of another, the end result is that of a different sound. If we combine two sounds the same, this will increase the amplified sound's volume. This is called constructive interference. Dynamic audio. This is when the audio changes as a reaction from the environment the protagonist is in. An example of this is when a player makes the switch from playing a standard game level to then nearing the boss level. The music will usually become more intense. Changing the music this way helps the player know there's something up ahead and to cause panic and fear. We can also use dynamic sound as a way to change sound variations. If we kept hearing the same sound over and over again, we would start to get annoyed. So by changing the sound's volume or pitch can help change up the sound overall. By implementing different sounds of the same effect in a random pattern, could also stop the repetitive sounds which over time would sound boring. Adaptive audio. Similar to dynamic audio, although adaptive is when the audio of the environment changes due to gameplay. I would say weather changes adaptive audio. I want you guys to focus on the little rattles that the saddles are making as the horses are moving, and the change of the sounds of the footsteps as they go from snow to the river. This is all adaptive audio, and this fully immerses the player in the world they are in.
Okay, you got it.
Diegetic sounds. This is when you can hear what the character can hear in the game. These are all the sounds that the character can hear within the distance of them. Listen to this clip as he's walking around. You can hear the footsteps, him checking his gun for ammo, listening out for perpetrators to take down. These are all diegetic sounds. We need these sounds because it helps us understand what's going on in the game. Without these sounds, then we'd be lost. You wouldn't know if someone was coming up behind you or anything. Non-diegetic sounds are the sounds that the character in the game cannot hear, like that acknowledgement there to say that they've passed that level and the crate's about to open. The character can't hear that in the game, but it lets us, the player, know that we've completed that challenge. The background music in games is considered a non-diegetic sound also. This is because it's just to entertain the player when they're playing the game. The characters themselves can't hear this music being played.
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427.
Narration in games are usually driven by a player's input. This usually is used to help to tell the story or to help the player understand the task that has been given to them. This game uses narration in a very good comedic way. It helps guide the player where they need to go, but offers the player opportunity to go against the rules.
But at last, he'd had enough of the amazing room and took the first open door on his left to get back to business. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Silence in video games is a very good technique. It can unnerve the player. Having no background music playing can allow the player to focus on just the sound effects. In this clip of the alien isolation, it sounds like the alien's above him in the air vents. Or is that just the ship's noise in general? When used well, silence in a video game can really unnerve the player and creep them out. Jack Foley was the pioneer of the Foley sound. Foley started working in the silent film era. Eventually sound was introduced to film. This is where Foley created the art in which we know today as Foley sound. Foley would add the sounds of footsteps and clothes rustling to the movie. As the films were still being shot in silence, Foley added the sounds at the times he felt it was required. Foley uses technique in pictures such as Melody of Love and Showboat to name a few. Jack Donovan Foley, the original true and first Foley artist. Foley sound is very important in movies and games and other media. This is how they create the sounds to make them believable. I do have a short video clip for you guys to check out Foley sounds.
We replace sounds that either should be there or shouldn't be there in a way that you, the audience, don't know we've done it. We get a chance to create the sounds right to the picture and then play it back. The process will be when we actually get to where we believe what it is we're seeing, that is what we're hearing. We'll use this for bone breaks. I'll demonstrate.
Being able to use this technique is amazing. We can now capture the sounds that we want and add them into the media we need to add them to. We can get the exact sound we need without any interference. Copyright gives the creator an exclusive right to the creative work that has been made. Usually when someone creates a piece of creative work like music, the creator will copyright it. This grants that person the right to use that piece of music, and only them. The person who owns the copyright can sell the rights and allow others to use it if they wish. We see this in video games quite a bit. When developing a video game, we need to bear in mind that if we're going to use someone else's work, it's going to cost us quite a bit of money. We're better off using our own music, sound that we create ourselves, because then it's our music and it's our sounds. This means it will be owned by us and only us, and it will bring down the costs. Thank you for watching.